Texas A&M punches its ticket to the SEC championship game? Probably.
You are Locked On College Football, smothered and covered, with your host, Barrett Sallee. Your one-stop shop for everything college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What a game in College Station. We will be here to recap all of it. Also got to talk, of course, about the earlier games. Alabama made a statement, whether you believe it or not. Of course, Ohio State almost let it slip away, but we'll talk about that too. Reminder, this show brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Hey, you know what? Get $200. $200 in bonus bets with your first $5 bet. That is a fantastic deal. Go to FanDuel.com, America's #1 sports book. And I said it going in, and I say it right now. Texas A&M essentially punched its ticket to the SEC championship game. Now, I know it's not official yet. They have 4 games left, 3 SEC games, but they're unblemished in the SEC. All right? Let's start there. Everybody else has a flaw here, a flaw there, a blemish on a resume here, a blemish on a resume there. Texas A&M does not. But it's all about momentum, right? It's all about momentum in this game. It's all about finding your identity. Kind of like college hoops, where with all the transfer portal, you don't know what you got until you sort of ease into the season and then suddenly figure out your identity. Texas A&M had an identity when Connor Wegman was out. Wegman comes back for 2 games, and you're thinking, oh, okay, A&M might be okay. Then Connor Wegman comes out and was awful against LSU. Marcel Reed saves the day. Marcel Reed is the identity of the Texas A&M offense. When he came in, everything changed. LSU knew he was a possibility. Everybody that watches Texas A&M knows that, yeah, Connor Wegman's #1, but we see what Marcel Reed can do. We've seen it. We know it. So spare me this idea that LSU wasn't prepared. Of course LSU was prepared for Marcel Reed. And they found him, and he's their guy moving forward. There's no doubt about that. Now, when it comes to the SEC championship game, A&M's in, guys. A&M is in. I know South Carolina's a little bit better, and it's on the road with Marcel Reed and Le'Veon Moss and the momentum the defense generated, especially up front. Now, I know about the interceptions that Nuss threw, and yes, that matters, but all of them were generated by pressure. All of them. They're playing front to back, which is exactly what you have to do in order to win a championship. So now we're sitting here at South Carolina, at Auburn, which, spare me the Kentucky game. Auburn, I know it's a tough place to play, but you got a defense like Texas A&M, and you got a quarterback like Peyton Thorne. Things are not going to go well. And then there's the Texas game, of course, rivalry weekend. A&M has set themselves up where they can afford a loss. They can afford a loss. Most likely. If it's Texas, yeah, 100%. They can afford a loss, get to the SEC championship game. They're still going to make the playoff. I don't care about the Notre Dame loss beginning of the season. Don't care. But the schedule combined with what they did on Saturday against LSU and the momentum that they can generate from that is enormous for this team. So a lot of people will tell you that no, it's too early. It's Texas A&M. We're not gonna fall into this trap again. No, yeah, fall into the trap. Do it. Fall into the trap. Texas A&M's going to the SEC championship game. If they don't, something went way, way wrong. Now for LSU, still got the loss. Still got the Bama game coming up. Obviously, the Bama game It looks a little different now than what it looked like 24 hours ago because Alabama, as we will talk about this later in the show, that actually was a very important win over Missouri, albeit a Missouri team that was riddled with injuries. But LSU in Death Valley is always scary. Get over that hump, and LSU can still get back to Atlanta. And I would love to see. That's not the normal Garrett Nussmeier. I think that in the biggest spot of his career, and that was the biggest spot of his career, he tried to force things. But what are the best lessons learned from? Mistakes. And the whole second half was a mistake for Nuss. I still think LSU can get there. I still think Nuss can figure it out. But what a game, man. What a game. That's what football's all about. That's what college football is all about. Now, competing with that on the Big Ten side was Penn State, Wisconsin. Now, I was still sort of up in the air with Penn State. And look, if you've watched this show, you know my feelings about Drew Aller. Didn't believe in him before the season, started to buy in throughout the course of the season. But this was the biggest game of his career, biggest stage of his career. Camp Randall, number 3 in the country. They've earned all of those accolades, but they're going up against a Wisconsin team that was less than stellar, hasn't lived up to its expectations. But you got that number 3 attached to your name, Penn State. You got that number 3 attached to your name, Drew Aller. And I don't care that Penn State was down at the half. He was awesome in the first half. But, he's out. Bo Pribula has to come in. No worries. Only 2 incompletions out of 13 passes, and he added 28 yards. This, to me, is confirmation that Penn State is actually a team that not only can make the playoff, but win it. Because now you have 2 quarterbacks. I think it was clear that Aller was doing fine. Now, we'll see what the extent of his injury is, but now Bo comes in and you don't miss a beat. You can still run the football. You can still block for your dudes. You could still play lights out defense. And here's the biggest thing. We always talk about situational football. What matters most? 8 for 14 on third downs for a team that had to substitute a quarterback at halftime on the road. I'm in, man. I'm in. Penn State, you have me. I'm hooked. You play Ohio State next. We'll talk about Ohio State later in the show as well. You have Ohio State at home. I'm on board, man. I'm on board. You have look. Are you explosive? Maybe not. Maybe not as explosive as Oregon, but everybody's got flaws. It's all about limiting those flaws, disguising those flaws successfully. I don't even know how big Penn State's flaws are at this point, but I do know they're a complete football team, and they showed it against Wisconsin on Saturday night. What a phenomenal performance. Again, I don't care that Wisconsin is not what the Badgers usually are. I don't care. That team can win a national championship. That team 100% can win a national championship. We'll take a break. When we come back, we will talk about the middle of the afternoon. And of course, we will break down what the Buckeyes did during the first wave of games. Today's show brought to you by PrizePicks. And y'all, I know you've heard this 1,000 times, but I'm gonna tell you again. I love PrizePicks. Coming out of COVID, sports started back up, NASCAR, golf. Those were 2 of the first ones, and they're on PrizePicks. And I'm sitting there going, man, I've craved sports. How do I spice things up? Well, I'm going to do PrizePicks. I'm going to win some money. And not to pat myself on the back, I did. PrizePicks is the best place to get real money on sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in award winnings, PrizePicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. You can run your game all season long with PrizePicks. And look, it's the best thing about this is they have this flex play. The flex play means You can still cash out your lineup if it's not perfect. You can double your money even if your picks don't hit. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play your first $5. You don't even need to win to receive your first $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks also offers weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts, like my favorite, Taco Tuesday. Each Tuesday, PrizePicks discounts several player projections up to 25% to provide even more value on your lineups. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's right. Download the app today. Use code LOCKEDONCollege. You'll get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. It is time to worry about Ohio State. This is a team that has been sporadic at times. The schedule was pretty weak leading up to the Oregon game. They looked pretty sloppy in that loss. Now, granted, that is to the number one team in the country, but against a Nebraska team that is coming off an absolute skull dragging at the hands of Indiana, you go in, you need a late interception to seal the deal. Look, when you have Quinshon Judkins, Jeremiah Smith, Emeka Egbuka, you are not supposed to only gain 285 yards. This was an inept offensive performance by Ohio State, and that should never happen. Why? Because they could not set the tone on the ground. Quinshon Judkins is a star. Travion Henderson is a star. Let's talk about those two guys. 29 yards and 25 yards, respectively. That won't cut it. And it's not doing any favors to Will Howard, who went 13 of 16. Now he had the 3 touchdowns, but still, Will Howard needs help to be an elite quarterback. He's effective when he doesn't get that help. He's efficient when he doesn't get that help. But if Ohio State's going to be a national championship caliber team, you can't have games like this. You can't have games at home when you come out extremely sleepy after a bye week. That's when you're supposed to do the most self-scouting. So yes, there is a reason to be concerned about this Ohio State team. Now, I picked them to go to the national championship game. After that loss to Oregon, I still maintained they will go to the national championship game. Now I'm not so sure. Because this team, to me, you have flaws like this, where you just sleepwalk through full games against a much lesser opponent. And Nebraska is a lesser opponent. When you need to make a statement, then I have concerns. They need to fix this. They need to make sure they can find a way to establish the ground game. Otherwise, Will Howard's not good enough. He's just not good enough. Now, I think in this game, more specifically, Nebraska, ball control is not something that I think matters all that much in this day and age. It did in this game. Nebraska basically suffocated and deflated that football all game long. Third down after third down after third down. Fourth down. Actually, take that back. Not fourth down, just third down. Dylan Raiola played fine. But to me, this was a very sloppy game for Ohio State at home with its C-plus game. And if you're a Buckeye fan, you have to look at this and think, okay, there's not much margin for error right now, right? In the Big Ten. There's not much margin for error. You lost a head-to-head to Oregon. You have Penn State doing Penn State things. You have Indiana doing Indiana things, and we'll talk about them in just a second. We've got Illinois still very much in the mix. Ohio State, to me, is looking a lot like Ole Miss in the SEC, where you know they're good. You know they're talented. You know they have what it takes to be elite, and yet they have games like this where it's just like, get yourself together, to steal a line from Chris Childers and Rick Neuheisel on Full Ride. They got to get themselves together because that is not a championship caliber team. Okay, let's talk about those Ole Miss Rebels. It's one thing to look subpar against Oklahoma's defense, because Oklahoma's defense actually is really good. But there was nothing tricky about what Oklahoma was doing offensively. Jackson Arnold was awesome on the ground. They came out with a good game plan, with Joe John Finley taking the helm, calling the plays now. They decided to go as far away from their weaknesses as they possibly could, try to disguise the fact that they missed every single wide receiver on their roster, and go old school. And it worked to an extent. But Ole Miss has got a good defense. They create chaos. They force turn. Like, this is a good Ole Miss defense that was getting gashed by a decidedly one-dimensional Oklahoma offense. Again, we talked about it last segment. When you're talking about teams that can actually win the playoff, not just get in, you can't have games like that. You can't almost refuse to make adjustments. And that's exactly what it looked like was going on in Oxford. And I think we talked about it last segment with Ohio State having a smaller margin for error. Ole Miss doesn't have one. Like, they don't have a margin for error. So looking like this against, I would say, a bad Oklahoma offense. And yes, it is a bad Oklahoma offense. Doesn't bode well for the future. They got Georgia coming up in a couple weeks. I'll be there covering that one. That would end it. Like, think about this. Jackson Arnold ran the ball 24 times. 24 times. Now, granted, he was sacked 9 of those. Those count. We don't need to. I still think that's a great way to go about it. I don't like the NFL way to keeping statistics. I like the fact that sacks are counted into rushing yards, but it was it. And Ole Miss still couldn't do anything about it. They still couldn't do anything about it. Now, there was some option mixed in, and okay, I guess that was enough. I mean, Barnes had what? 67 yards. 67 yards. In the second half, you saw them make a concerted effort to get him more involved on what looked like zone reads, but really were more designed runs. Okay, but the Rebel defense is supposed to make adjustments. They're supposed to recognize, hey, they got nothing. Let's creep 2 safeties up. It didn't seem like they did that. So Ole Miss, you don't have a margin for error. And I don't think you can continue the way you are without dropping at least 1, maybe 2. So poor performance, especially at home, man. So disappointing for Ole Miss to have that kind of performance at home. Take a break. Hoosier Mania coming up on the other side. Show brought to you by FanDuel. $5 gets you $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's right. You place your first $5 bet at FanDuel, you get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. All the information's right there on the same page in which you place your bets. Live play-by-play game stats, everything you want. So if you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you don't got to go anywhere else. It's right there. You can place your bet and see what happens for the rest of the contest. $5 bet gets you $200 in bonus bets guaranteed only at FanDuel. We talk about Indiana a lot on this show, and I think you saw why against Washington. No Curtis Rourke, no problem against Washington. All the hype, all the buzz, game day there didn't matter for Indiana. They have not trailed this season. They've won every game by 14 or more points. This is a very, very good Indiana team that has put itself in position to make the Big Ten championship game. At this point, frankly, I'd be surprised if they don't make the Big Ten championship game. And if they continue to play defense the way they do and they get Curtis Rourke back, that team's dangerous. More dangerous than I think a lot of other teams in the Big Ten. And based on the way Ohio State played today, maybe even more dangerous than Ohio State. And we'll see. We get that game late in November. I love this Hoosiers team. I love Curt Cignetti. We talked about it last week. He's going to get offers from every single program around there, even if they're not even considering making a coaching change quite yet. He will still get offered. There are going to be dollar bills parachuting in onto his house. I mean, this is one of the best coaching jobs I've seen in a very long time. This is a broken Indiana team that he has taken to a legit top 10 team, a legit Big Ten contender, and a team that has no fear. And I think that's the most important thing. All the spotlight, the bright spotlight on them didn't matter. Didn't matter. No fear. Go out there, do what you do. Doesn't matter. You don't have your quarterback. Play your game, play your defense the way you play defense. Go out there, build a lead, and then suffocate your opponent. That's exactly what they did. So good job, Curt Cignetti. Today's show brought to you by FanDuel. Hey, place your first $5 bet, and you will get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's right, one $5 bet earns you $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Right there on the page in which you place your bet, you'll find play-by-play stats, everything. If you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you know you can do it all right there on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. All right, so Alabama and Missouri, I think the game was basically over from the moment Brady Cook went out late in the first half. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't take a lot from this. After all, this is an Alabama team that played down to its competition quite a bit. Obviously, we know about the losses, right? The Tennessee game and the Vandy game. They played down to USF. They played down to South Carolina. They play down to their opponents quite often. And to go out there a week after losing to your rival with all of the naysayers doubting you, even though Missouri was undermanned and I think overrated, it still matters that you defended your home turf. It still matters that you left no doubt. It still matters that they played far more disciplined than they have in previous games. So I think Tide fans, don't get caught up. Oh, we're finally back. No, you're not finally back, but you're getting there, or at least there's a sign that you're getting there. I'm honestly surprised it's taken this long for Alabama players to buy in, but it felt to me like this was the first game that they bought in. No, Drew Pine was not going to beat you. Brady Cook might have been able to. I doubt it, but still. But Drew Pine certainly wasn't going to beat you. But you didn't play down to your competition. You stayed within yourself. You kept making plays. You took advantage of mistakes that were made by Missouri, specifically Drew Pine. And all of that is good. All of that is new to Alabama. So, look, it might not be a game that leads the late night news show or sports shows, college football final, SEC final, SEC tonight. It's probably not going to be a game that gets talked about a lot, but it should, because this is not something we're accustomed to seeing from this Alabama team. And we saw it finally on Saturday afternoon. Now, Texas and Vanderbilt, it was sloppy. It was ugly. That's the way Vandy likes to play. And Texas didn't matter. Didn't matter. Quinn Ewers was awesome in this game. Don't let the stat sheet, don't let the box score fool you. Yeah, the 2 interceptions were on 2 tipped passes, but after the first one, he was on fire for about 2.5 quarters. Then he got another tip pass that the guy made a great play on. But Vandy's good. Vandy's good. For Texas to go out there and do that, I think is a testament to Sark, because they could have come into this game hungover. They weren't. They could have come into this game and after getting punched in the mouth, kind of folded. They didn't. And then when Vandy, which if you listen to SiriusXM's College Sports Sunday, myself and Tom Luganville said this all week last week and all week the previous week, Vandy is not a bad loss. A Vandy win is a good win this season. And Texas got the job done. Now, they still need to improve, right? I think the offensive line, even though it might not bear it out in the box score, the offensive line was subpar-ish. That can't happen. But for Texas to go up there, Nash Vegas, get that win. Good job, Sark. Good job, that staff. And now we see where they go from here. Final month of the season. Could Texas make the SEC championship game? It was a big win. Big win. So good job for Texas. And look, Diego Pavia, oh, buddy, you are still so awesome. That'll wrap it up. Hey, remember to sign up to be a College Football Smothered and Covered Insider. Subtext. Link below in the description, whether you're watching or listening. It's right there. You can text me. I can text you. We can have a conversation like we're friends because, hey, you know what? We are friends because you are watching or you are listening, which means I appreciate you more than you'll ever know. Don't forget to subscribe, make a comment, give it that thumbs up, hit that notification bell, all that stuff. Amplify the show, however or wherever you're consuming it, because that's how we get it out to the masses. Got to manipulate that algorithm, so to speak. We'll be back on Monday. Until then, have a great Saturday night / Sunday, everybody. We'll talk to you soon.